Coogs House. The Houston Cougars enter the Big 12 with some big names and some experience up front, but they still get asked a lot of questions. Let's explore.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way we can get the latest on the Cougs into your newsfeed each and every day. I appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. And welcome back to the YouTube channel if that's where you are. It's good to see you again. Remember, every 250 subscribers on YouTube, we are giving something away. We've been, teasing a hat like the one I've got on right now, Locked On logo on the side and Cougar in the front, for someone at 1,500. So make sure you hit subscribe to get us there. We're at just over 1,400. Like and comment on the video to let us know you're in the contest. If after hearing all about the big men up front for the Houston Cougars, you're not quite sure what to say, tell us what flavor of ramen you go with. We also need to note that when we approach the 2,000 mark, if we can get there before the TCU game, someone will be getting a Big 12 a jersey from the Houston Cougars, like a replica jersey with the Big 12 logo, in honor of the first Big 12 football season for the Houston Cougars. Now, I need to admittedly eat a little crow here. I made a mistake in yesterday's episode, so we're going to start off today with a correction. After the fact, correction. I did mention that quarterback Donovan Smith did start at quarterback as a senior at Friendship High School in Texas after having played wide receiver at Bishop Gorman High School and was all-state and everything, playing wide receiver out of Bishop Gorman, which is one of the power perennial programs in Nevada. I omitted that he was apparently a backup quarterback as well, right? And he had played some quarterback before, but his game snaps, I guess, by and large, did come at Friendship. That said, I did not mean to dismiss the work that Donovan Smith had been doing as a quarterback and on perfecting his craft before his senior year of high school, just that his game snaps had come as a senior in high school. Obviously, I hope the bulk of what came through in that episode was how excited I am to have Donovan Smith taking snaps for the Cougs this fall, and the competition that he and Lucas Coley have going right now is really, really exciting, and I think everyone should be excited for the outcome of that as it goes. But that said, obviously, I didn't mean to dismiss any work that Donovan Smith had been doing beforehand. Let's leave that as it may. All right, let's talk through today's episode. First, I want to talk about a couple of guys that are future pro pass protectors. Then I want to talk about the rest of the experience on the Houston Cougar offensive line and other faces and names you're going to need to know. And then last but not least, certainly, I'm going to talk with the guy running the show for the Houston Cougars offensive line, the new offensive line coach, Eman Naghavi. Now, I have to say that as we do this, we're going to kind of fly through it and talk about what the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of these guys are. Obviously, these are all based on watching them play a year ago. We didn't have a spring game to break down and that kind of stuff. We need to see them against live competition to have more in-depth insight. I'm still looking over my words because I don't want to take anyone off. I think these guys are all very talented, but I do think they get the short end of the stick, because I think a lot of people just assume that American Athletic Conference offensive linemen just won't be as successful in the Big 12, and I think that's a lot of hogwash. And I want to start by talking about a couple guys that are potential pros on the Houston Cougars offensive line. The guy that certainly is a pro, might have been drafted last year had he gone out, is one Patrick Paul. Patrick Paul is a 6'7", 315 pound right. He played left tackle. Projects to be a right tackle at the NFL level at least. He has 27 starts the last 2 seasons, only allowed 4 career sacks, 3 of those coming in 2021, just 1 of those coming in 2022. I'll repeat that. He has played over 2,000 snaps entirely at left tackle for the University of Houston and has only allowed 4 sacks. That's a pro-level pass protector no matter who you're playing against. Never mind that he played against several pass rushers that are in the NFL or going to the NFL, right across, or that's playing Alabama in the bowl game, playing Texas Tech, or what have you. Never mind actual good pass rushers across the American Athletic Conference. He has played top-end competition, dominated top end competition and only been beat for a sack 4 different times in his time at Houston. He's a redshirt senior. That will come up later, trust me. I think he's a really talented pass blocker. I think he's an like a potential All-American and pro, all everything pass protector. If he wants to elevate his draft stock and get into the first round of the NFL draft, which he has the potential to do, one thing I'd like to see him do next, the next elevation to his game, is I think that as he continues to like lower his pad level on things like down blocks and squeezes, we call them squeezes, but basically when he's blocking into the B gap to kind of flatten the line down for a puller to come around or what have you, if he continues to lower his pad level, I think have more push and leverage in those instances. At 6'7", that's obviously like going to be naturally more difficult for a guy that size, right? He's got to get lower and under 6'4" defensive ends and things like that to move them better. I do think, though, that it sounds like after talking to him at media days that he has been working on his body. He reiterated that 2 or 3 times when I asked what about his craft he'd been working on. He kept going back to his body, and I hear that as flexibility, durability, etc. Not that he wasn't durable before, but you feel me, right? And for what it's worth, he has lost like 20 pounds or 25 pounds since showing up to campus. And so I do think like he looks like lean, like a strong 315. I don't mean to say like he shrunk or anything like that, obviously, but he is an athletic, big man. The other thing I'll say is that like tackles typically lead your team in holding penalties, so it shouldn't be any surprise. But he did have like 9 holding penalties last year. Maybe it's the last 2 years. Sorry, I'm reading my notes wrong, but maybe continue to chip away at that. Might help him get in the first round as well. That said, most offensive line coaches, including this one, would tell you if you are an offensive tackle and you have the opportunity to either commit a holding penalty or let someone smash your quarterback in the face, you typically take the holding penalty and see if they call it. So I understand why tackles end up having more holding penalties. I will say that if he can clean up the keep the laundry off the field on the flags and lower his pad contact on the down blocks, which he'll have ample opportunities to do. Let's talk about Eman Naghavi's offense later in the show. Then you'll see him as a first-round NFL tackle. Like, he is that kind of guy. And frankly, as a giant that he is, the potential is through the roof. Another guy I think that is getting an underrated look, I want to give shout-out to that might be a pro, is Jack Freeman. Jack Freeman is what we're calling a super senior, entering his 6th year as a Houston Cougar. Started a couple years ago, then sat behind a transfer, and then started every single game last year. Played more snaps on offense than anyone else in the offense last season, and in just over 900 snaps last season. I'm getting my S's all confused. In just over 900 snaps last season, he allowed just 2 sacks, right? As a center. Now, I have to say that his athleticism and mobility as a center is top tier. I imagine he makes a run as one of the more talented guys in the Big 12. As a center, there are some big dudes to be moving around. Obviously, we've talked before about like Corleone at Cincinnati or anyone. I guess we don't play BYU this year, but they have a bunch of large behemoth types as well. A lot of Big 12 teams have a 350 plus pound guy that kind of will always fall someone on the center to help block to some degree. So Jack Freeman putting out that kind of tape would help propel him into the first round, not into the first round, but at least into an NFL draft pick, I think. First round would take a little bit more improvement on his mobility, side-to-side pass blocking stuff, but I could see how that could come up as well because Houston always does very well pass blocking, has grown into a very strong pass blocking team. I will say that part of the thing that helps him out is he's already able to play center, right? Guys that play center get looked at in the NFL as guards and centers. Guys that play tackle get looked at as guards and tackles. Guys that play guards get looked at just as guards, right? So admittedly that some of the things helping Jack here are his positional mobility, but I also think that people see a guy that captained a very, very strong offense last season. Whatever you think about the team last year, the offense was one of the best in the NCAA as far as putting up yards, points, etc. And they'll see like, oh, he's in charge of everything as the center. The center is the second quarterback on the field, making all the calls for the line and all that kind of stuff. The leader of the team in so many ways. If he does the same kind of things this year and shows that last year was not a fluke or last year was not a one-hit wonder, and I don't think it was, then I think that that's the kind of thing you'll see Jack do very, very well moving forward and launch himself into the NFL. I mentioned things to work on for me. Obviously, just good to see him play 350-pound guys and see how he handles that, because we just didn't get to see it on tape as much last year. But also the side-to-side mobility in the pocket. You see oftentimes centers do what we call pinballing, right? And then even front, if the two defensive tackles are matched up with the guards and pass rush, you're kind of going back and forth, pinballing from side to side to make sure there's no penetration one way or the other. That requires a lot of quickness and, frankly, fantastic timing. And that's a long way to say, like, that's really, really difficult. And so if Jack can get that down, we're looking at a real pro at center as well. Now, I want to talk about all the other talented guys in the offensive line and kind of hopefully convince you, as I'm convinced, that this offensive line is ready for the Big 12. But let's also talk about being ready for kind of something that happens to a lot of guys across the world. I know I have a hat on these days, and I talk about giving hats away. But the truth is that most guys do go through something with their hairlines. And so we talk about our newest sponsor here at Locked On, that is Nutrafol. Now, you don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. Men think losing your hair is inevitable. Take control of your hair's future with Nutrafol's science-based hair growth supplement for men. Men tired of weakening or thinning hair. Do you want to reach your full potential? Lead into the leading hair growth supplement, Nutrafol, helps improve your hair growth with visible thickness and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth within by targeting root causes of thinning hair, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for more. All right, so I do want to talk about the other guys, because I think we have to point out that Patrick Paul, redshirt senior, Jack Freeman, super senior. The projected other starters in the offensive line are Tyler Johnson at right guard, a redshirt senior, Tank Jenkins at left guard, another super senior, and Ruben Unije, who friend of the show, at right tackle, another super senior. That means everyone in the projected starting five will be in their fifth or sixth year as a college football player. Now, I think Tyler Johnson, Tank Jenkins, obviously, are probably the lesser known names as the two guards. Tyler Johnson started last year, so you might remember his name. Tank Jenkins started a lot more the year before when Houston was 12-2, but admittedly did not get a lot of reps last year when Cameron Johnson stepped on the field and kind of took that left guard spot. Cameron Johnson now obviously transferred to Missouri to follow Coach Brandon Jones, former offensive line coach at University of Houston. Those kinds of things happen. Those two guys, I think, are going to kind of be like key to how this whole thing functions, because they're going to have a lot more asked of them in an Eman Naghavi run-based offense, or at least the kinds of things he's asking for in the run game require a lot more hinging on those two guys and block downs and kickouts and stuff like that. I'll talk about more about the Naghavi scheme in the third segment, obviously, but I do feel like we need to tag in and point that out. The other thing I have to say about Ruben as the projected fifth starter at right tackle is that when Ruben is healthy, Ruben Unije, there is no question that he is a top tier talent that was visible for people that watched him play at IMG. I mean, he went to Illinois at the Big Ten right away at high school, right? Like, Ruben can play. The deal is keeping Ruben healthy. And frankly, he told us when we talked to him a couple weeks ago now, back, he's feeling as good as he's ever felt. His body's in great shape. He took good care of his body in the offseason. He is really, really feeling up to the task to play a lot more snaps this season. And frankly, all three guys, when you look at like their Pro Football Focus stats and stuff like that, rank very, very high analytically as far as being right place, right time, etc. Obviously, it's hard to be in the right place, right time if you're Ruben and aren't on the field because you're hurt. Some guys just get bad luck with that kind of stuff. I'm not going to sit here and badmouth the guy for getting hurt. That's not his fault. I will say, though, that if he is healthy and those five play to their potential, the starting five offensive line for Houston is Big 12 caliber. No punches. Not holding anything back. That is a Big 12 caliber offensive line. And not like just like, oh, we're in the Big 12, like a good one, right? Again, five guys that have played 5 or 6 years of college. That's important at the offensive line position. You frequently see teams just blanket redshirt freshman offensive linemen because being small or younger at those positions is really, really hard to do. And coming into the league with mature bodies, just bigger, stronger, physical guys with experience playing for Dana, experience playing in high pressure situations, experience playing at the Division I level are important. That's also a bunch of guys that have played against the Auburns, played against the Texas Techs, played against the Kansases, and frankly, for what it's worth, played against the Cincinnatis of the world, right? That like are also in this conference now too. And so I think that that's important to keep in mind with these five guys. If, as I always say as a coach, someone breaks their shoelace. So if Ruben Unajay breaks his shoelace, you're like, who is the next tackle up? The guy to me, as I watch things unfold, is Shamar Habdi-Lee, the Florida international transfer. He was a starter for the last season at left tackle for them at Florida International, another D1 program. Now, not a big Power 5 D1 program, but another D1 program right there in South Florida. If Unajay were to need to miss a series of quarter or whatever with said broken shoelace, I think that that's a very natural slide in for him at right tackle. Habdi-Lee does, again, also score very highly on the Pro Football Focus things. FIU's strength of schedule would be obviously so much further behind than Houston's the last couple of seasons that I don't know that he'll work his way into the starting group. But I do think he'll put enough pressure on someone like Ruben to kind of push things around in that way. The other tackle I could see happen here, more of a project guy, but a David Ndukwe, Western Kentucky transfer, 6'6", 310, super long arms, all things project tackle. I think he's still projecting, though, because he is a project. But again, I think those three guys in the fold to work and compete for the right tackle spot are intriguing. I think Ruben gets the nod as long as he's healthy, based on a number of different things. But that's worth pointing out that competition, much like we talked about the quarterbacks yesterday, is a good thing for the big fellas. I mentioned Tank Jenkins and Tyler Johnson working the interior a couple spots. The guy competing with them, I think, is interesting because if this guy plays, it tells a lot about what Naghavi wants to do. That's Peyton Dunn. Peyton Dunn is a transfer from a 2-year starter at Louisiana Monroe. Not just because I guess if you go far enough back, Eman Naghavi coached at Louisiana Monroe. But Peyton Dunn comes in with the downhill gap scheme run kind of mentality, that like bulldog, like I'm going to push people over, as opposed to the finesse, making reads on the defenses, and those kinds of things that you might have to in pass cover and pass blocking. If Peyton Dunn is a starter, or if you see, man, we've seen a lot more 66 in this game than we've seen in the past, that's because things are going downhill. Not like downhill like bad. That means we're running the ball downhill, right? Peyton Dunn gets after it. He is a very pleasant person. It seems like in every media availability he's had, everything he's talked to, but he plays football like a jerk. And I mean that in the best possible way you want your offensive lineman to. So I could see him push Tyler and Tank towards that as well. I think it's an elevation of their style of play, though. And I think that's a good thing. Again, people break shoelaces. People need competition. Those things are good. The athletic question mark on the offensive line room that I don't know where it happens, and I've been kind of high on this guy, and now I'm not so sure where he fits in, is Jalen Garth. Jalen Garth was a Texas transfer, frankly, about this time a year ago, but didn't get to play last season because it transferred late and that kind of stuff, right? If you watch him work out, as far as like weight room and explosive stuff goes, if you talk to guys about the things he can do athletically, he is apparently as athletic as any offensive lineman in the program. And I'm including Patrick Paul, and Patrick Paul is a pro. I mean, Jalen is an athletic, big man, but it sounds like there's still some stuff he's putting together as far as where he fits into the fold here. He's not quite a tackle. He's not quite a guard. And they have some other guys that have very clear positions, right? And that I think is probably hurting him some. So Jalen Garth could be a Swiss Army knife. he could also be a project player, right? So we'll see where those kinds of things go. I would pay attention to his name when it goes in the game, though, and if maybe not in week 1, 2, 3, but if by like that Kansas State week you're starting like, oh, he's playing a lot more guard, or oh, if by Cincinnati, like, oh, he's playing a lot more tackle or whatever, then suddenly like, oh, that's where he's settling into the offense, right? Those are the things to pay attention to as you watch Jalen play. A couple of younger guys that I don't know if they get on the field much this year are very talented as well. I don't mean to dismiss Demetrius Pancake Hunter. First of all, anytime you have a lineman named Pancake, that's a good sign. But he is a true center, and Pancake is a like talented center. I mean, he was committed to Oklahoma initially at high school, like a always going to be a Big 12 Power 5 offensive lineman, and frankly could develop into a pro offensive lineman because the sky may be the limit for this kid. He's very much built like a pro center build. His body is built like a pro center. But he is a redshirt freshman. And we mentioned at the top of the show that we have Jack Freeman playing center. So, like, does he get a whole bunch of snaps playing that spot? It might just be kind of a continue to grow and develop and then get your 3 years as starter and go to the league kind of thing after that, right? That would not be uncommon. Same kind of thing for like Carson Jones. It's a little bit slender, more athletic, yes, but also just needs to continue to put good weight on offensive tackle. Does he develop into a Big 12 starter? I think so, but not this fall. Again, we're looking more like 2024 with a guy like that. And that's important to see as you're tracking these offensive linemen. Again, that's not a bad thing. You've got a starting 5 that is ready and experienced. You've got a swing tackle in Habdi Lee, a swing guard in Peyton Dunn, a couple of athletic guys in Garth and Ndukwe that you're like, what can we do with these guys? A couple of young guys in Pancake and Carson. You're like, what are we going to do with these guys? Like, these are good things going on in the offensive line room. And as we transition into the third segment, Eman Naghavi is the guy that gets to tell them what to do and where to go, right? Naghavi obviously came from Tulane. You've heard the story 1,000 times before. Tulane had the giant turnaround last season, and a lot of people put that on Tajay Spears and the offensive line, the way they were running the football. Naghavi is a gap scheme guy. And what I mean by that is a lot of blocking down, so blocking like towards the center with backside guys kicking out, and you're creating a new gap, right? Gap scheme. Gaps off front side, right side of the offensive line would be blocking towards their inside gap or gap closest to the center. And then the backside guard will pull and kick out and create a new gap off the tackle's butt, right? That kind of stuff. I thought it was interesting in watching his Tulane tape and the stuff he does there, that he does a lot of stuff with the like an H-back type of guy. I think at Houston, you'll see a lot of either a big receiver, like a man jack, or a true tight end doing that same kind of stuff when it comes into as far as it comes with Houston. You're seeing kind of experimenting with a lot of it. What I'm really interested to see, and this is my coach's brain, this is what I think is really hard to stop as far as like what a defensive coordinator would have trouble with, is if you scrap the H-back, just have a traditional tight end in the game, if at all, but you're using your running back like said H-back, and then running your quarterback like a running back and creating the same kinds of angles and things like that, but with one less player. The defense then suddenly can't key on things. And frankly, you can do all kinds of fun RPO stuff because of box count games. Like, okay, with the quarterback being the runner, we have 6 people in the box to block. If they have 6 or less people, we're running it. If they have put 7 people in the box, that means we have one-on-ones on the outside. We know Houston's wide receivers are as good as anyone in the conference. Suddenly we got one-on-one match with Matthew Golden. We're all right. Like those kinds of games start to come into play when you use the running back as a lead blocker in those kinds of instances, or at least the threat of him being a run blocker. So if you only do it twice a quarter, but every single formation, the other team doesn't know what's coming, right? You can start to see things shift and change. As far as what works well in a gap scheme, what kind of back fits into a gap scheme, I think that's a common question when you look at this, because people are like, with Noah McCaskill, what's Houston going to do at running back? They've got the guys. You want guys that run well between the tackles in a gap scheme. You don't typically break it to the outside until like the second level or later, because you've got to squeeze between that newly made gap, which again happens typically between tackle and tackle, and then burst. And then once you get to that second level, then you're escaping and evading linebackers. So we tell our guys, when you're running power, right, the H-back or the up back or what have you, it's creating a little gap just off the play side tackle. The backside guard is pulling a lead blocking, and you're running right there off of the B gap area in the tackles, and then you run hash number sidelines working slowly outwards, right? That kind of a running back. I think they've got the guys to do that for sure. The thing that, if you're looking at what Tulane did so well last year for Naghavi, is that the counter for a defense, and this is coach talk, and that this is too coach talk for you. I'm sorry, but thank you for making this far in the episode. The counter for this would be for defenses to collapse those gaps, right? To have your defensive linemen spear the pullers and stuff like that and just cause chaos and just a giant pile in the holes, right? Because a running back that's good between the tackles is typically not the guy with the kind of speed to then burst the outside and win a foot race and get around the corner. Tyjae Spears had that speed, right? I think Houston's got a bunch of backs by as far as like a committee goes, and they'll probably be looking for guys that can, flip those gears back and forth. The truth, though, is that like it's really, really special to find a guy that can do both of those things. And so if schematically you see a defense doing that to Houston when they're just sparing the puller or sparing the H-back or whatever and just taking him out and causing a pile, you may see more speed kind of stuff on the field as far as personnel goes. If they're not, or they're having trouble, you may see more sturdiness kind of guys, the Brandon Campbells, right, or whatever, right? One thing that Naghavi did at Tulane that I like put in the back of my mind and then helping getting ready for the season, I'm like, wait a second, I'll pull that back up. He did the occasional speed option. He did the occasional we call it an orbit motion with the guy running behind the quarterback for an option kind of thing. All turned into glorified toss stuff. That is to say that the quarterback was an air quote run threat at Tulane. And obviously when they played Houston, had the quarterback injuries, and it actually turned into a little bit of a run threat. But the truth is that the majority of their season is spent that it was just an air quote run threat from the quarterback because it made the defense commit to him, and then it turned to a glorified toss or outside zone or sweep or whatever, right? Most notably because you see Tyjae Spears then take off the field for 45 yards or whatever because he's really, really good, right? I'm at least glad that he beat USC, by the way, because then it's not just us saying he's really good. The whole country's always really, really good. Now, with that said, Naghavi has a very different quarterback situation at Houston, right? We know Donovan Smith can run. We know Lucas Coley can run. What kinds of elements do those add to those option-y kind of games that he did a little bit at Tulane, right? Can they add wrinkles to that because they're a little bit different kind of talent, and I'd argue a little more talented than the quarterbacks they had at Tulane, right? Now, obviously, I've talked a lot about what Naghavi does in the run game because, well, really two reasons. One, that's the big difference you're going to see on the football field this fall is Naghavi is a gap scheme guy, not a zone scheme guy. So it's not just fitting up and like just kind of covering guys up. It's really more movement of guys, movement of guys. It's not just covering up bodies, moving bodies, right? That's a big difference, especially it's a big different kind of ask on your offensive line. The second thing is Dana ain't dumb. The pass game ain't broke from last year, right? That was not. They kept Clayton Tune clean. That stuff was not broken. That doesn't mean that Coach Brandon Jones didn't take some of that with him, right? That very much could have happened. But by and large, you got an experienced group of 5 guys that have played 5 years or more of college football up front, right? They understand pass blocking. They understand the rules. I don't know how much you want to mess with that and change all that in an offense where, again, Holgorsen's going to still have a giant imprint on this. I don't think it's going to change all that much. Now, if you think it's going to change a lot, tell me in the comments below. Find me on your favorite social media source at Ainsworth512. Tell me what you think is coming in the offense. I'm excited the offensive line. I will say that I think that they get a bad rap because everyone thinks it's just easy to blame the offensive line when things aren't going well. And I think that's kind of crappy. But I think they're really set up for a good year this year. So talk to me about it at Ainsworth512 or in the comments below. And thank you so much for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. For making it this far, I want to tell you and remind you, if you do hashtag every day or have a question in the comments in the YouTube page down below, we will do our best to answer them throughout the show as we go. Thank you all again so much for listening to us today. Locked On Cougs, the Prime Locked On Podcast Network. And as a proud member, I'm going to recommend that you listen to Locked On Big 12 by new host Drake Toll and all the fun shenanigans he's getting into over there. Let's say he's talking some noise about Houston. I think you should go listen to those shows and comment your thoughts and be very, very intentional about your word choices. Thank you again so much. Locked On Cougs, Prime and Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.